All right, so let's get started. First step, visit McCalls.com and click on the link to download free PDF pattern and instructions for M8169. Gives you everything you need to make your own face cover. It'll print out on 4 pages of 8.5 by 11 paper. We've made it really easy, no special equipment, no special paper needed. Just make sure that when you print, it's on 100% scale so that you get the right size for your final pattern. So the first page you'll get will have a technical drawing of what the finished face cover should look like, a list of things you'll need, which includes a ½ yard of 1/8 to 1/4 inch wide elastic, and suggested fabrics of tightly woven cottons. Stuff like broadcloth, quilting cottons, things like that, but we'll get into that more later. It also gives a little bit of cutting information that you're really cutting 2 pieces of fabric. Not bad. The second page is your 5 easy instructions along with simple to follow and very, very helpful illustrations that guide you through the entire process of placing your elastic, sewing it, turning it right side out, forming your pleats, and finishing it off. The third page, here's where the magic happens. This is your pattern. This right here. A nice, simple shape, nothing scary, no curves, nothing weird. Just a simple rectangle with all the markings you're going to need to help you. It's giving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, some markings for placing the elastic, and lines to help you form the pleats that'll give the face covering its final shape. The last page is going to be a message from us to you, congratulating you on completing your sewing adventure, inviting you to join the community, and it's also just another way to stay in touch. Check us out on YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So we're going to be working with this really nice peacock blue broadcloth. Now, as you can see, it's got a really nice tight weave like we talked about before, which really it gives a good sense of a filter. And that's what we're recommending for these face coverings. And you know, it's a great color. Chances are you have something like this already in your stash. If not, it should be pretty easy to find something like this. If you don't have fabric, you could even cut up a sheet or an old pillowcase, anything like that, because they're usually made of something similar to this. Now, what we're using here has a nice little cute floral print on the other side, because you know what? If you're going to have something to protect you, it might as well express your personality at the same time. So, folding it together so that you have both sides of the pattern on the inside, because that's the right side of your fabric. You want to treat it nice. Let's lay it out and take our downloaded pattern and just drop it right on. Let's shift it over here. We don't like to waste things. And we're going to pin it down. And you want to pin through both thicknesses because you're going to cut them at the same time. All right, so we're pinned down, we're ready to go. We know what's next. Let's bring them out. There you go. I hate that squeak, but there you go. So let's give it a cut. Cut as close as you can to the edge of your pattern. Get a nice clean line. So what you have now is this really cute little fabric done in the right shape. So what I'm going to do, there's a lot of different ways you can do these, but you're going to want to mark these little dots here somehow. A lot of people, everybody has their own personal method because this is going to be done and all your workings are going to happen on the inside. What I'm going to do, instead of using a pencil or anything like that, is I'm going to put a little clip. And there's a reason for it, and I will explain why. Here's your 4 little clips. Don't go through the seam allowance. Let's take our pins out. And let's see what we have here. So you now have two identical pieces, and for the first time, you're going to actually open them up. We'll show you why. The next thing you're going to need is two lengths of 7-inch wide elastic. Nice and stretchy. Mine is a 1/4 inch. Funny story about this is I ordered it from Amazon and it was in such high demand, I did have to wait almost 2 weeks for it. Go figure. But it's a good thing. It means a lot of people are making these. A lot of people are helping the people around them. It's a good thing. So you need 7 inches. And here's a little trick. I drew a line that is exactly 7 inches on a piece of paper because especially if you're making a bunch of these, this just makes it so much easier than sitting there having to measure each and every one of them every single time. Boom. And then the next time you have to make one, just keep it with your pattern and everything's good. So remember those markings that we made? Well, here we go. This is where they come into play. The reason I didn't mark it is normally you'd mark on this side, but I need to put my stuff on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of elastic and I'm going to center it over where I clipped and sew it and give it a nice little pin in place. Same thing, gonna loop it around, and then pin again. Try not to twist it because that makes things uncomfortable. This is a good time to check before you do anything. It's gonna draw in a little bit, that's okay. So we'll do it on the other side. There's my clip. So that's what it's going to look like. So what this is ultimately going to be, this is going to be one side of your face covering, and these are the loops that'll go around the ears. So the next step will be to take this other piece with your right sides together, so pretty sides together, and then you'll pin all of this together. Yes, those will wind up in there, but it'll be okay. So then we'll take it over to the machine. First thing we'll do is stitch these two sides, make sure that everything is secured in there, and then we'll go back and do the rest. Okay, so now it's time to get sewing. So we have our two sides pinned together with the elastic in between. Oh, there it is. So we're going to sew this as directed in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's put down the presser foot, needle down, thread back, and get started. Now start slow because there's going to be, if you remember, a couple of pins in here, so you certainly don't want to be running them over. So we'll start a little slow until we get there. Up, there it is. You don't want to run it over because it's bad for your needle, it's bad for your pin. Hashtag sewing fail. There it is. Let's pull that little guy out. Presser foot's holding down the elastic, so we're all good. So we're just going to keep going. We're just going to go right over it. And if the little piece sticks out, just pick up your press foot, shove it back in place, show it who's boss. Now the other thing I like to do, it's going to be interesting to see, but we're going to back it up a little bit, a few stitches. And what that does is it adds an extra row of stitching that's just securing that elastic. That elastic is going to have to do a lot of work, so let's give it all the help we can. Now the rest of the way, see, that just doesn't want to listen. We're just going to go straight down and keep sewing until we get to the end. Now you can see the elastic's pulling it. Just give it a little tug to make it straight, and you can keep going. Now remember, we have a hidden pin under here again. So let's go find it. And a little treasure hunt. Pull it out, smooth it out, and start sewing over that elastic. We're going to back it up just to reinforce it. then finish. Pick it up, trim, and we're ready to do the other side, and it's more of the same. Okay, now that our sides are secure, let's do the top and bottom. Now you can see I have it all pinned up already. This side is pinned all the way across. This is going to be one side. It's going to be the top, and we're going to stitch all the way across. Flip it over. Now this side, I'm leaving a couple of pins here with a little open space to remind me. This is where we're going to leave an opening so we can turn it right side out. So let's start with the easy side, the easy peasy side that's got everything all the way down, just pretty straight across. So we're just going to go ahead and start sewing in a 1/4 inch seam allowance again, and back stitch. Now the reason I'm back stitching this one is to reinforce this corner, because when it comes time to turn it right side out, I don't want to have any holes poking through it. I don't want any weak points. So a little extra thread there is never going to hurt anything. So we're just going to keep sewing all the way through. Now this side, remember, this is the side we're going to leave an opening. So we're going to start and stop and start and stop. Okay, so this pin tells us don't go any further. So we're going to back stitch it so that it doesn't rip when we're turning it. And then we're going to take that out and take out everything and go for it. Little clip there. And now this is where we're going to start again. So we're going to put the presser foot down and keep going. Back stitch so we don't rip it. And then go all the way to the end. Okay. And now this little guy is ready to turn. Our face cover is all stitched in place now, all 4 sides, including this opening that we left here. And now it's time to turn it right side out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handy scissors and I'm going to clip this excess off of each corner, just snipping off a little triangle. What this does is it gets rid of extra fabric that would otherwise squish into the corners when we turn it right side out. The lumps are uncomfortable and hard to sew through when you're finishing it off. So this is a really good thing to do. And now we're ready to do that. With the corners cut, we're now ready to turn it right side out. We're going to use the opening that we left, and there it is, and literally just kind of shove the fabric through to turn it right side out. I believe most of us have done this with socks and things like that coming out of the laundry. And this, you're now seeing why we double stitched at the edges of the opening, because we're jamming all this fabric through there. And oh look, it's a pretty flower. And eventually we'll smooth it all out, and you can even use the elastics to tug it a little bit, and suddenly your corners will start to emerge. And what you now have is the cleaned out version of your face cover. All the gross stuff is on the inside, and all we have to do is make these corners pop out just a little bit more. So I'm going to use a paintbrush. And the reason I'm using the paintbrush, I'm not using the soft end, is I'm using this end here. And you can use anything that is pointy but not too sharp. If it's too sharp, like a scissor, then you could just poke a hole right through it. So we're going to insert into the opening we left, and just gently shove a little bit, a little poke here, a little poke there. It's not going to be completely crisp, but it's going to be as far as it can go. And yeah, all this needs now is a press and the next step, which is a little edge stitching and finishing, and that's going to be our next situation here. Okay, so here we are back at the machine, and what we have is something that's starting to look like a face cover, kind of what you're expecting. We have a nice, neatly pressed, turned out face cover with elastics that are already secured inside, and so we're ready for the next step. And somewhere in here is the little hole. Oh, there you are. Hello. It's the little hole that we used to turn it right side out, and now we want to close it up. And what we're going to use for that is an edge stitch. It's exactly what it says. It is a stitch that runs close to the edge, and what it's going to do is give a nice, clean, secure finish to the whole thing, and added bonus, close up the hole so you don't have to worry about it. So in order to achieve this, we're going to get the threads out of the way. We're going to keep our needle all the way to the left here, and then use your presser foot the inside of that and line up your finished edge right here. Now, I would say start slow because you have bulk in the corners. And until you get used to it, you can kind of get into a groove. I like to go slow because I tend to wander off and go off the entire piece. And yeah, we don't want to do that. Now, as you get to the corner, go slower because you are going through some layers, even though we have trimmed it out a little bit, but it's still there. There we go. Now, when you get to the corner, leave the needle in, pick up your presser foot, and pivot. Now, I'm pivoting a little bit catty corner because it's not exactly 1/8. And then we'll put our presser foot back together. Now, when you get to the fourth side, you have a decision to make. You could do a couple of things here. You can tie off the ends and then make them a little knot, or you can do another thing that I think is much easier, which is, pivot one last time, is to kind of run over your first few stitches. It almost locks it. If you go right over it, now you're overlapping, and it kind of acts as if you're securing it or locking it in place. And as you can see, it really doesn't look any different. It's just a little bit of extra thread, but it means you don't have knots, you don't have little ends sticking out, which is a nice clean finish, which is pretty nice. It's pretty secure, and you've also got one more set of stitching to help hold those elastics in place to give it a little extra help. And we're almost there, folks. All we have to do is put the pleats in to give it its shape, and we are done. Now that our face cover has been neatly edge stitched, it's time to give this some shape. We're going to do this using pleats, and the first thing we have to do is mark those pleats so that we do it correctly. So I'm going to take my pattern and I'm going to slide it underneath my finished face cover, well, almost finished, and I'm going to just slide this over a little bit so that even though it lines up in here, I can see all of these guidelines for the pleats. I'm going to take some pins and I'm going to pin right through so that it lines right up with it. And the reason I'm doing this is it beats putting on a lot of pencil marks and things like that, because now we're all working on the right side here, the pretty side. And if you use something that doesn't wash out right away, you're not going to be feeling it. So this, I think, is a really easy way to do it. It's an easy, kind of a foolproof way to do it, because you really are just using the lines that they gave you. And you may notice that I picked out only pink and purple pins, and I did that on purpose. It's so that I know I can keep it all in order, and I know which line goes where, and it will matter in the next step, and you'll understand why. When you're doing it yourself, you can use any color you want, but I happen to do it this way because I thought it would be an easier way to illustrate it. Now I'm going to flip this around and I'm going to do this on the other side. Slide it over, make sure, and then if you place the pink one here, put one here. It's sort of like good old-fashioned color matching. Those of you who might be old enough to remember Garanimals, and it's pretty much a foolproof way to make sure that you match everything and it makes sense. All right, we're all marked, we're all pinned, and we've never even used a single marking pen or pencil. And we are ready now to give this some shape and finish this off. So we're in the home stretch here. Now we're going to create the pleats that turn this from a flat face covering into something that contours and fits snugly around the nose and chin and mouth. In order to do that, we're going to have to make some pleats. So as you can see, these are the pins that we placed earlier, and I did go through all of my pins and I found only pinks and purples, but I have a really, really good reason for it. These pins, each one lines up magically with the guidelines that we have on our pattern to help us form our pleats. So let's put the pattern over to the side. Here's why the pin colors were so important. What I'm using is, I'm going to use the purple pin and I'm going to bring it over to meet the pink one. This way, by having it like this, I'm going to do it consistently all the way down. So in order to form my first pleat, I'm going to take the fabric, I'm going to pinch it right where the purple pin is, and I'm going to bring that right over to the pink one. Pull out the pink pin, and then take the purple pin all the way through. Now it's holding it together. You see I have a nice even edge, and it's all securely pinned together. I'm going to do it again for the second one. Pinch, bring it over to the pink, pull that one out, pin it all together. And we're going to do it one more time. Pinch at the purple, bring it over, keep the edge even, keep the edge even, and pin it in place. So now you can see we have it really nice, 3 neat little pleats here, and I'm going to flip this around and do this on the other side. Now instead of pleating down, I'm going to pleat up, because then what I will wind up with is a continuous fold that runs along the entire length of the face cover. So we're just going to do that. So now, give it a little tug, and what you see is we have 3 nice, complete accordion-style pleats going across the entire face covering, and all we have left to do is secure it. Time to secure our pleats in place. So according to the directions, what we should be doing is sewing all the way down to hold everything 1/2 inch from this finished edge. Now, just to check, make sure I have the right amount, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to place it right where the needle is, and I'm going to see where 1/2 inch is, which is conveniently right at the end of this presser foot. So as long as I keep my edge here, I'll be able to get 1/2 inch down all the way. The first thing we're going to do is baste them in place, so that a basting stitch is a really long machine stitch that helps hold things down temporarily. It's not a permanent fixture, it's just there to keep things steady, so that, especially with a lot of thickness like this, you can really hang on to it while you're doing your final stitching. So put the presser foot down, start slow, and just go. Take out the pins at each pleat, and we're just going to keep going straight down and do it one more time. And I don't mind going slow because I feel like accuracy is more important, and it also prevents me from going a little bit too far with all the thicknesses. Now in this case, I'm actually going to leave the tails because I'm going to use that later to pull out the basting stitches. And we'll do it on the other side. And now it's all secure, but it's not permanent yet. I'm ready to secure these stitches permanently. So I'm going to start by taking my stitch length and I'm going to take it down to about 3.5 millimeters, which is much shorter than a basting stitch. I'm going to put everything down and I'm going to start stitching at the same about 1/2 inch. And what I'm going to do is, now I don't have to worry about pins and I can spend more time concerning myself with, is it straight, is it even, is it neat? So first I'm going to start a couple of stitches and I'm going to back stitch a little bit here so that I don't have to worry about it undoing, and then I'm just going to go. That basting stitching is really helping me right now keep this straight and even, because I'm not worrying about taking out any kind of pins or anything like that, which is nice. And back stitch again, and we're going to do it on the other side. And you can see I've got a second set of stitches. These are much shorter than the basting, and that's going to be just what we need. That's going to be a more permanent hold. So I have just a little bit of stitching left to do, and all that's really left is to add another row of stitching between 1/4 and 1/8 away from the first one. That'll help give it a little extra security and keep all of this from flopping around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my presser foot and I'm going to line up my current row of stitching with this edge. It's a little bit more than 1/8, a little under 1/4, but for our purposes it's going to be just fine. So I'm going to put down my presser foot, make sure I line it up, and I'm just going to start sewing. Not too fast, and sometimes with all the thickness you might have to pull a little bit from the end to help it along, but it all comes together in the end. And if we pick that up, we will see I now have 2 nice little rows that are going to help hold everything in place. Trim that off and do it on the other side. Last little bit of house cleaning to take care of here. So those tails that I left on the original basting stitching is now just ready to be pulled out. Oh, that is so satisfying. And that way we do not have to worry about extra stuff. And this, I can now trim off these little extra bits and bobs here. Let's see if that is, oh, that is, see, hashtag satisfying. That just pops right out. And this is going to be clean and finished and ready to wear. After all that cleanup, what we have now is a nice finished face covering and elastic to go around the ears, nice and comfortable, and secure on the edges, and opens up right in the middle to contour properly over the nose and the mouth and the chin. And machine washable. You can wear this when you're going around running your errands or anywhere you need to be and feel really comfortable and protected.